In 1911 Kiev, Russia, one of the most notorious Jewish ritual murders occurred. An innocent young child by the name of Andrei Yushinsky was discovered to have been killed for occult rites. Menachem Mendel Beilis was accused of being the perpetrator of the crime. Jews from around the world sought to conceal the true nature of the crime, and they spent over the equivalent of at least 115 million in today's money so that the Beilis team of lawyers would win the case. Several witnesses died under mysterious conditions prior to trial. Mishuk, a high-ranking police investigator, was proven to have planted false evidence to benefit Beilis. 3 innocent children who had been with Andrei and witnessed his abduction by Beilis were given pieces of cake by a scurrilous investigator named Krasovsky, and the next day all 3 became ill. 2 died as a result, and the 3rd was sick for months. The one who survived, Ludmila Cheberiak, said, "We started to ride the clay mixer. Suddenly, Beilis and 2 other Jews ran towards us. We jumped off the clay mixer and tried to run away. Andrei and my brother, Zhenya, were caught by Beilis and the other Jews, but my brother freed himself. The Jews then dragged Andrei away. My younger sister, Valentina, also saw this." John Grant, who was the American consulate stationed in Odessa, Russia, at the time, reported the jury's final verdict. Grant noted that it was determined by a jury that a certain boy found cruelly murdered in Kiev had been killed by fanatical Jews, and that Jews, for occult purposes, had carefully drawn all blood from the dying child, that it was an instance of Jewish ritualistic murder, that Beilis was innocent. While it was proven to have taken place inside the synagogue at the Jewish-owned Zaitsev factory, the jury could not determine for certain that Beilis was the one who wielded the awl, causing Andrei to be punctured over 45 times around his body in an effort to procure as much blood as possible. If you look closely, and I realize it might be difficult, but if you look closely, you can see 13 puncture marks to the side of the child's cranium, which Jews reportedly did as part of some sort of ritual as a sacrifice so they could overthrow the Tsar. Vivi Rozanov, a popular Russian poet and writer at the time of the Beilis trial, wrote a book about the incident too. His book is called The Relation of Jews to Blood, and it tells how Hasidic Jews use blood in occult rites. Rosanov's book also describes the Kabbalistic mythology used in Yushinsky's murder by the Hasidic cult. In essence, the stab wounds were reportedly made in a ritualistic manner. A summation of Rosanov's findings shall follow. In the Kabbalah, there is a Sephirothic tree that is made up of 4 worlds. Pictured here is one world. Each world has 10 spheres, which are connected via 22 channels, with these channels corresponding to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Going from Sephiroth 8, honor or glory, one would take channel 21, which corresponds to the Hebrew letter Shin, to arrive at Sephiroth 10, the kingdom. The letter Shin then implies that for Jews to use such symbology in the placement of stab wounds during their ritual murder, it is thus done to honor the Jewish deity and to attain the Jewish kingdom over the world. In Rosanov's book, he shows the Hebrew letters associated with the lower triangle of Sephiroths. Some of these other Sephiroths in the lower triangle are Sephiroth 7, victory, and Sephiroth 9, the world of elements. On page 225 of his book, Rosanov writes that the placement of the wounds on Yushinsky's head were actually a partial representation of the Sephirothic tree, represented most clearly by the proximity of the stab wounds, believed to be symbolic of the Hebrew letter Shin, which is at the bottom left. Here we see an illustration made by Rosanov that shows the placement of the wounds, with an overlay of the bottom triangle of the Sephiroth world for illustrative purposes. The photograph of the child Yushinsky is shown for comparative purposes. You may notice the bottom right section of Yushinsky's temple does have 5 wounds in close proximity that seem suggestive of this Hebrew letter Shin. Here is the picture of the Hebrew letter Shin for comparison. And here is a magnification of the wounds to Yushinsky's head, which Rozanoff noted are the symbolic depiction of this letter. For illustrative purposes, small lines are drawn from the wounds, connecting them together, to demonstrate how the Kabbalists interpret the symbolic nature of these wounds, according to Rozanoff. Even an intelligent skeptic must admit that his findings certainly seem plausible. Shin is commonly used amongst Kabbalists, as shown in this picture of the Hebrew triad, that uses the letter Shin to help signify the 3 Sephiroths. Also, the letter takes an important meaning for the middle letter of the word Jesus in Hebrew, or Yehoshua takes on the meaning of man without it. Thus, it is believed that Jews engage in such acts to their deity not only as an honorable way to attain their Jewish kingdom over the world, but also to prevent the second coming of Christ, who they believe would stop their earthly kingdom from occurring. According to Rozanoff, there is even a name given by Hasidic Jews to the entire ritual murder process. They call it Echad. The Hebrew and Russian equivalent are shown here too. Beilis was freed because only 6 of the 12 jurors felt he was guilty, a simple majority being required. Too many witnesses were killed and much evidence had been destroyed prior to trial. Much like O.J. Simpson in the U.S., Beilis was allowed to walk unpunished. Later, he immigrated to the United States, where he lived out the rest of his life. Prosecuting attorney G.G. Zamyslovsky wrote a 520-page book about this, which was called The Murder of Andrei Yushinsky. But the Bolshevik Revolution occurred shortly thereafter. Jews participated in Zamyslovsky Kangaroo Court, which was the very first trial of the communist regime. Zamyslovsky was murdered for having revealed all the facts concerning this matter. His book was then classified until 1997 so that others might not know the truth of this terrible ordeal.